Today we're looking at World War I, Year 5, 1918. Hello, welcome to the Daily Bellringer. Please don't forget to subscribe and take a look at the questions down in the description. Also, don't forget to check out dailybellringer.com where you'll find more resources that go with many of the Bellringer videos. Since fighting began in World War I during the summer of 1914, neither side, the Allied or Central Powers, had been able to achieve clear victory. 1918 would be another year of intense combat, but by the year's end, fighting would come to an end. The previous year, 1917, had seen interesting developments in the war as Russia had officially withdrawn from the conflict and the United States had decided to enter the war on the side of the Allies. In January 1918, President Woodrow Wilson outlined his 14 points, which was his plan for how peace could be accomplished to end the war. His plan focused on open diplomacy or open communication between nations, freedom for vessels to be at sea without fear of being attacked, and improving economic relationships between nations, among many other points. However, as Wilson was discussing ideas for peace at the same time, Germany was preparing for a major offensive that would decide the fate of the war. Although the United States had declared war in 1917, American troops and materials had not been fully mobilized and reached the battlefields of Europe yet. German leaders believed that they could defeat British and French forces before the U.S. could fully engage in the war. So beginning in late March of 1918, Germany began a series of attacks known as the Spring Offensives. On March 21, 1918, Germany launched a 6,000-gun artillery attack and pushed Allied forces back and recaptured ground from the Battle of Somme, fought 2 years earlier. But after 2 weeks of fighting, British forces put up strong resistance and the offensive stalled. By the end of March, in an effort to better coordinate their efforts, Ferdinand Foch was appointed Allied Supreme Commander on the Western Front. Shortly after, on April 9th, Germany launched its second offensive, attacking on the northern end of the Western Front at Ypres, Belgium. But here again, the combined British, French, and Australian forces were able to stop the German progress by the end of April. Undeterred, Germany launched a third offensive starting on May 27th, aimed at the middle of the Western Front. Here, German forces overran French defenses. Surprised by their success, German troops made a quick push towards Paris, but Allied reinforcements, which included newly arrived American troops, were able to stop the Germans and turn them back before they reached Paris. Immediately, the American Expeditionary Force under General John J. Pershing began to push back the German forces. American forces by late May numbered nearly 650,000 in France, with an additional 10,000 troops arriving each day. On June 9th, Germans attempted yet another offensive to push towards Paris, but this time they faced both French and American troops that caused their offensive to crumble in a matter of days. On July 15th, Germany launched its final offensive of the war around Reims, France. But here again, French and American troops were ready for the attack and were able to counterattack, driving German forces off. Starting on July 18th, 1918, British, French, and American forces began to coordinate their own series of offensives to push the German army from their trenches along the Western Front. Allied forces were able to successfully push German forces out of the Marne region. Then, on August 8th, Allied forces attacked in the Somme region, forcing the Germans to quickly retreat and taking over 10,000 German prisoners. Then, on September 12th, American ground forces, along with over 1,300 attack planes, coordinated an attack on the southern end of the Western Front. The Americans captured over 15,000 German prisoners and hundreds of artillery pieces. Shortly after, on September 27th, Allied forces broke through the heavily fortified Hindenburg Line, again forcing German forces to retreat. The Allied forces continued their pressure on the German army, forcing them to retreat further over the next several weeks. In early October, German military commanders informed the German legislature in Berlin that they could no longer stop the Allied advance and that the war was lost. Germany began the process of negotiations and requesting for an armistice, or an agreement to stop fighting for a certain period of time. In the meantime, on October 24th, Italian forces were able to push the Austrian army out of Italy. Barely a week later, on November 3rd, Austria signed an armistice with Italy, now leaving Germany alone in the war. Then on November 11th, 1918, in the rail car of Allied Supreme Commander Ferdinand Foch, Germany signed an armistice that took effect at 11 a.m. At exactly 11 o'clock, all was quiet on the Western Front. The fighting was over, but it would not be until June of 1919 that the Treaty of Versailles would be signed, bringing the war officially to an end. The war to end all wars had come to an end, taking a terrible toll with an estimated 20 million people dying in the war and an additional 21 million wounded. In the years following the war, Europe would be reshaped, and unfortunately, the events of World War I would contribute to the outbreak of World War II. So with that, hopefully you learned something, and thanks for watching.